On a crowded subway train, a young girl gave up her seat for Pope Francis, a simple act of kindness but full of compassion. She never expected that the man was not just an ordinary passenger but the head of the Catholic Church. However, what was even more surprising was when the Pope gave her a special gift, leaving her speechless with emotion. A gift that not only held material value but also carried faith and hope. This story will make you reflect on the power of small gestures, yet full of meaning in life. Right now, let's listen to this touching story. You won't believe what happens next. The sky was bright, covering the city of Rome, with warm rays of sunlight streaming through the trees in the Vatican's courtyard, making everything around shine. Pope Francis stood alone in a small corner of the courtyard, his eyes glinting with a strange determination. Today, he had decided not to use the luxurious cars or heavily guarded transportation like usual. He wanted to take the subway. Although he knew that this might cause some difficulties, he felt something stirring in his heart. Just a regular trip, he thought. Just like any other person. John, one of his close bodyguards, quietly approached, his eyes filled with concern. Holy Father, the subway is not a safe place for you. There might be unexpected dangers. The Pope gently responded, his voice clear but resolute. John, sometimes I just want to be a normal person. I want to experience the lives of the people around me, not just look at them from a distance. The bodyguard team had no choice but to agree, and they prepared to escort him on this rather unusual journey. Soon after, the Pope and his security team arrived at the subway station. The hurried footsteps of the passengers echoed everywhere, blending with the train whistles and the rumbling engines. Everyone hurried past, eyes glued to their phones or lost in their own thoughts. But when the Pope descended the stairs, everything seemed to pause. He was still wearing his white robe, a striking image among the passing crowd. But no one rushed to ask for pictures or push to get close. Instead, the crowd seemed to fall silent, eyes warm and smiles gentle toward him. A quiet respect spread, not loud, but full of warmth. The Pope stepped onto the train, sat down, and looked around, his eyes shining brightly. Each person on the train had their own story, and he observed them intently, as if feeling the heartbeat of the city in each small gesture. A mother gently comforted her child in her arms. An old man frowned as he concentrated on his morning newspaper, and a group of young people were debating the movie they had just seen. No one seemed to be in a hurry, just calm, as if everyone understood that they were sharing a special space with a high-ranking individual. But at the same time, a person just like anyone else. When the train stopped and new passengers boarded, a young man carrying a guitar caught sight of the Pope and seemed to pause for a moment, not believing his eyes. But then he just smiled and continued on, not making a scene, yet surely thinking of something special in his heart. The Pope smiled and watched him, his eyes lighting up with an uncontainable joy. This trip was not just a means of transportation, but a way for him to experience a deep connection with the people around him, people who were not remarkable, who had nothing special, but were essential parts of life. The subway continued to roll on, gently swaying to the rhythm of the city. Each stop was a moment of intersection between lives. Silent stories slowly unfolding in the cramped space of the train car. The Pope stood quietly beside the train pole, his eyes scanning the faces around him, observing every moment of ordinary life that unfolded amid the city's rush. When the train reached the next stop, the doors opened, and the crowd flooded in. A little girl, about 7 years old, appeared in the crowd, with her bright, sparkling eyes and short hair. She entered the car like a small wave, quick and full of energy. She didn't have much time to look around before she rushed to a vacant seat near the Pope. The Pope, with his long robe gently waving as the train swayed, initially didn't notice the girl. He was busy watching the small gestures of a group of passengers exchanging a conversation. However, just a moment later, he felt a gentle tug at the back of his cloak, like an invisible hand pulling at his robe. Turning around, he saw the girl standing beside him, her innocent yet curious eyes looking up at him. It was the pure gaze of a child who knew nothing about the vast world outside. The girl tugged at his robe again, more firmly this time. The Pope was a little surprised, but he didn't show any sign of annoyance. At this moment, his bodyguards immediately moved to protect him, but the Pope raised his hand to signal them to stop, gently reminding them, "It's okay. Don't worry." He slowly bent down, smiled at the girl, and softly said, "Hello? Do you want to say something to me?" The girl pointed to the seat beside her, her voice innocent and determined. "You should sit here. My mom says older people should sit down. You look very old." She spoke simple words, but full of the trust of a child who had been taught respect and care for others. The Pope could not help but laugh. His eyes brightened, and his smile was like a warm ray of sunshine on a rainy day. "Your mother is truly a wise woman," he replied, his eyes sparkling and his voice sincere. "And it's very kind of her to teach you these things." The little girl giggled, nodding in satisfaction at his response. Then she added, her voice full of kindness and naturalness, "I'm fine. You can sit down. I can stand." Her words, though simple, were filled with care and selflessness. The Pope gently looked at the girl, touched by the purity and human values she embodied. He looked deeply into her eyes and replied softly, "Thank you, but I'll stand a little longer. Sometimes standing for a bit is okay." Maya was a small girl, but her heart was as vast as the sky. She had no hesitation in standing up, gently pushing her seat back, her innocent eyes and sweet smile as if offering her seat to someone who needed it more. There was no doubt or hesitation in her actions, just natural kindness, as if it were something she always did. The Pope moved, looked up and around. The other passengers on the train also began to take notice, surprise and admiration clear on their faces. But no one spoke, everyone remained silent, respecting the moment. He stood for a moment, his gesture gentle but full of dignity. "You did a wonderful thing," he said, his voice warm and full of appreciation. "I am truly honored to sit in this seat." Maya did not say anything more, just gently smiled, her eyes lighting up as if she had done something very important. The Pope sat down carefully, not forgetting to give a warm smile, and both of them remained silent for a while. "What's your name?" he asked, his gaze resting on the little girl. "Maya," she replied, her voice soft, her eyes still sparkling as if the name itself were a part of the light around her. "Maya," he repeated, his eyes full of tenderness. "Your mother must be very proud of you. You have done something full of love and sacrifice." She looked at him, her eyes as pure as a child who had not yet known the complexities of life but understood goodness very clearly. "My mom always taught me that helping others is the most important thing," Maya said, her voice firm but still with a touch of innocence. "So, I think you would be happy if you sat in my seat." The Pope nodded, his eyes sparkling as if Maya's words had touched a deep part of his heart. "I'm very glad to be talking with you, Maya," he said. Then after a moment of silence, he asked, "Are you traveling alone?" Maya nodded, but her eyes briefly glanced at the empty seats around her. "Yes. I'm traveling alone. My mom is busy, and she has to take care of Mrs. Edith. I went to the pharmacy to buy medicine for her," Maya replied simply but confidently. "My mom has taught me to do this since I was little." The Pope looked at her, slightly leaning forward, feeling Maya's maturity even though she was only 10 years old. "You are very brave," he said, his voice warm like a soothing wave. I don't think a child like you should have to carry so many responsibilities. Maya just shrugged slightly, the smile still on her lips. But there was something profound in her eyes. It's not hard because my mom taught me how. She told me I should help Mrs. Edith because she's very weak. And Mom can't do everything. He felt a vague sadness in his heart when hearing Maya talk about Mrs. Edith. Is Mrs. Edith at home with you? He asked, his voice gentle, as if wanting to share Maya's concern. Maya shook her head, her expression turning thoughtful. She can't get out of bed. Sometimes she has to be in the hospital. Mom says she's very tired. And I don't really know why. Mom just told me I have to be strong to help her. When Maya spoke these simple words, the hearts of everyone on the train seemed to still. Though she was very young, the girl showed an uncanny calmness and maturity. Pope Francis listened intently, his expression pensive, sensing that Maya was not just a child who happened to meet him, but the heart of a family courageously facing all challenges. Though unspoken, the love and bond within it were always strong. He smiled at the girl and said in a warm voice, Maya, you are truly special. I can feel the love you have for your mother and grandmother. They are very fortunate to have you. Maya looked up, her eyes lighting up at the praise. My mom always says family is everything, she replied with pride in her voice. That's right, the Pope nodded, his eyes sparkling. Family is strength, it's where we find the motivation to keep going. The train continued to glide silently, but Pope Francis couldn't stop thinking about what Maya had just shared. The things she said, the sacrifices and perseverance in her daily life, made him feel as though a heavy weight was on his heart. Maya had offered her seat to him without hesitation, and that simple gesture contained so much gratitude and respect. He continued to observe the girl from afar, as Maya stood next to the train pole, her small hands gripping it firmly. Her face no longer carried the uncertainty it had before, but was replaced with an extraordinary sense of determination. Pope Francis sensed that he needed to do something special in return for Maya's kindness and goodness. Then, he reached into his coat pocket, searching for something he always carried with him to give to those truly deserving. He smiled when his hand touched a small pin, a special gift he often kept by his side. The miracle pin, a sacred item with profound spiritual significance, not because of its material value, but because of its deep meanings. The pin was engraved with the image of the Virgin Mary, with her arms outstretched as an invitation of infinite love, surrounded by peaceful prayers. O Mary, Immaculate, pray for us. On the back was an image of a heart pierced by a sword, symbolizing the Virgin Mary's pain, with small stars around it reminding us of the greatness of the apostles. Pope Francis turned to Maya, who was now looking out the window with a thoughtful, innocent expression. Maya, he called gently. Maya turned around, her gaze a mix of surprise and curiosity. How can I help you? Your Holiness? She asked. Pope Francis took the pin and placed it in her hand. This is a small gift for you, he said softly, as if conveying a profound message. Maya looked at the pin in her hand, her face puzzled. Her small fingers traced the engravings on its surface. Really? She asked, her voice trailing off. What does it mean? Pope Francis smiled and explained gently. This is the miracle pin, a symbol of the Virgin Mary, who always protects and accompanies us. I often carry these pins as a reminder of the presence of Mary and the prayers she offers us. You deserve to receive this gift, Maya, because I can feel your sincerity and patience. I hope it brings you strength and faith during difficult times. Maya looked at the pin, puzzled and curious. But how can it help my grandmother? She asked, her voice soft, her eyes wide with wonder. Pope Francis replied slowly, yet with great comfort. It's not magic, Maya. But when you hold it with faith, it will remind you that the Virgin Mary and God are always with you, always listening to our prayers. These prayers are powerful, and they can help Grandma Edith through her difficulties. Have you ever prayed, Maya? Maya nodded lightly, her eyes brightening as she thought of what her mother often said. My mom prays every day, she replied. She says that if we keep praying, God will listen. And she promised that when she gets better, she'll take us to church. Maya felt a warmth spread from her heart as she heard Pope Francis listen to her story. In his eyes, she was not just a young girl, but a reflection of strength and unshakable faith. Maya felt as if her heart had been strengthened, as though his words were beams of light illuminating the path ahead. Pope Francis bent down, his gaze full of warmth. You are very special, Maya. Never think of yourself as small. With each step you take, you will always have the protection of faith. Keep hope, for that is something that can never be lost. Maya clenched a pin in her hand, her eyes sparkling. I will protect it, Maya whispered, feeling the pin as a priceless treasure that could never be lost. Pope Francis smiled, his eyes shining brightly. Yes. Keep faith in your heart. And remember, no matter where you are, God is always by your side. As the subway train slowly stopped, Maya stepped out of the door, still holding the gift tightly in her hand. She didn't fully understand the significance of the pin, but the feeling it gave her was so special, as if it connected her to something invisible but eternal. Every detail on the pin, from the image of the Virgin Mary to the small cross, held a deep beauty, like a part of the promise she had received. As she walked out of the station, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the man she had just met. She wanted to tell her mother Carla and grandmother Edith right away about the wonderful gift she had received. She smiled to herself. I met a very kind man on the train. He gave me this pin. Such a magical gift. Remembering that encounter, Maya couldn't forget the man's smile. A smile that was not only a sign of kindness but also sincere care. To her, he was just a kind stranger, someone who had given her a precious moment in a world full of worries. Maya walked down the street, the pin still safely in her hand, warm like a small flame, burning bright and never fading. Each step she took seemed fueled by the special gift she had just received. The busy street, with the bright neon lights reflecting off the shop windows, illuminated her face. But Maya's mind couldn't leave the words of Pope Francis. Every sentence, every word, was deeply etched in her heart, like a soothing melody full of meaning. When the little girl stepped into the house, the door creaked softly. Maya hurried to the living room where her mother Carla was sitting, reading a book. Grandma Edith sat nearby, engrossed in a magazine. The light from the desk lamp illuminated her face, creating a cozy, peaceful atmosphere. Maya could not contain her joy. She ran to her mother and grandmother, her eyes shining, the pin still in her hand. Mom! Grandma! I just met a very special person on the subway, she said excitedly. And in that moment, she felt a deep connection with her mother and grandmother. Maya, who did you meet? Carla asked, surprised by her daughter's enthusiasm. I met a kind man. Mom, he's a very important person. I don't know his name, but he gave me this pin, Maya said, carefully opening her hand to reveal the pin, sparkling in the lamp's light. Grandma Edith looked at the pin, her eyes full of admiration. This is a very special gift, my dear. It's not just a small object, but a symbol of the faith and love we can share with one another. She gently stroked Maya's hair, as if to impart to her the strength of unconditional love. Maya smiled at her mother and grandmother. She felt a deep sense of peace spreading through her heart, as if this pin was a reminder of the invisible protection she always had. Whether standing in a crowd or alone in a small room, The words of Pope Francis still echoed in her mind. Hold on to hope. And now, that hope was no longer just an abstract idea. It lived in her heart. With each step she took, in the small pin she always carried, Maya knew that, no matter what the future held, she would always have faith and love as her steady source of strength. Maya had received a gift not only of material value but also of steadfastness and boundless love. And in that moment, the small pin was not just an ornament, but a symbol of a promise, of unwavering faith, and the connection between people. The words of Pope Francis were not just simple advice, they had become a guiding light in her life, bringing faith, hope, and strength to help her face any challenge in life. And each time she looked at the pin, Maya would always remember that, no matter how vast and bustling the world was, she was never alone, because love and faith would always be with her, like lights guiding her step by step on her life's journey. Note: this is a fictional story, intended for entertainment and to convey meaningful messages. The content of the story does not reflect any real events or individuals. The author is not responsible for any misunderstandings related to this story.